Hello there, welcome along. This is Business Connections Live. It is edition number 13. Steve Harland here. It's great to have your company. And boy, have we got a cracking show all lined up for you over the next 60 minutes. Really is an interesting one. If you're into social media, then we're going to be explaining a lot to you. With me this evening, my guest is Steve Nichols. He's the author of the best-selling book, Social Media in Business. Hey, look, I've actually got my own personalised signed copy of said book. It makes a really interesting read, actually, and I think what you're going to find about this whole show is it's going to be the kind of program that's going to give you a real insight in what you should be doing with social media. Let's have a chat with the guy that's actually joining us tonight. It is Steve Nichols, author of the best-selling book, Social Media in Business. Steve, great to have you with us.
Oh, very nice to be here.
And I tell you what, the book is absolutely fascinating. I was reading the book. I just couldn't believe that it's such a different approach. We've looked at social media before in the past. We've talked Facebook. We've talked all the other social media, you know, Twitter, and also LinkedIn as well, for that matter as well. But the thing that's interesting is that all the other experts we've had said you can't really build a business on using social media. But you say different. You're saying yes, you can. You can really influence the bottom right-hand corner of your P&L, can't you? You can grow your business. You can sell product.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I would say that if you're not doing that, then you're already behind.
So, I mean, how many people do you think waste the opportunity when it comes to social media?
Well, I suppose you could argue most people.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it's down to resources. I mean, if you're a small company, it's actually quite difficult to do what a big company can do with lots and lots of resources. So, sorry, I'm just getting the.
Oh, is it making noises?
Yeah, sorry.
Don't worry, I'll turn that down. It's not a problem at all, and I say it's actually got a proper running presentation taking place there, and I think that's what's so wonderful about this, that it is actually a live program.
Yeah, sorry, I was just getting the feedback from you, hearing you talking.
No worry, there we go.
Brilliant.
So that should make it a lot easier.
Yeah,
So the situation that we've got then is, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about you. How did you get to where you are today, and how come you've become this worldwide expert when it comes to social media?
Well, I started out actually as skyscraper construction, actually in the building industry, and my job was a project manager. So I did that for about 15 years, and I was building buildings all over the place. And once you've done that a few times, then you're going over the same stuff and you hit the same problems. And eventually I decided that I wanted to switch to the technology industry. So I did an MBA and moved to British Telecom, as it turns out, in the technology. So I was always a bit of a technology buff. And then I started building companies.
Right.
And we're working with BT all over Europe and all over the world with them. And then I moved into technology with the startups. So I started with a startup in a big one in America, which was in optical networking. And then I moved into voice over IP, so some quite complex technologies. I'm not a technology buff in terms of, I'm not a technology man, I'm basically a business guy. And then really I found myself moving into social media. I did an MBA, an MSc about 6-7 years ago. And I was just interested in Facebook and Twitter. I could see that was coming along, and it just looked interesting.
Did you find at the time when you were talking about it that people were saying, nah, it's never going to catch on, it'll have no relevance in the world of business? Or did you think to yourself, or were you meeting people who were saying, this is the future?
No, I mean, actually at that time people were going, why would I need that? They didn't really see any relevance to Facebook or Twitter. I mean, there were a few people, but most people, you know, you go to a dinner party and they go, what is it? And
what's that all about then?
Why do I need this? And I'll never need that. But that was the same conversation I had when I was at BT many years ago when the internet first came out. People used to say, why do I need the internet? And you'd have one PC in the corner of the office somewhere, which was, you know, only one person was allowed to use it. People used to say, why would I need the internet? So, you know, it's almost like we've gone full circle now with technology, where we're now at social media, and people are really catching on to the fact that it's actually useful. As you mentioned before, you know, can you make business out of this? Yes, you can. I mean, but really there's two levels of social media we're talking about. One is what I would call the tactical social media, and that's typically the 4 or 5 buttons you see on somebody's website. That's what you'd call tactical social media.
Yeah.
That's really channels in marketing sense. So it's really looking at that, how do I use those as channels to marketing? But what I'm really looking at is how do you look at social media across the whole business? So how do you bring it into the DNA of the company, across the whole company? Because really what you're talking about, social media really is about communication. So if you look at what social media enables you to do, it enables you to communicate very simply and easily, so connect together. It's like a global brain. So if you're in a big company, of course, it's a big brain.
This is some of the words you use in here, actually, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it is very interesting that it is perceived sometimes like a global brain, isn't it? It's like the infrastructure you see in somebody's head.
Well, the more we're getting, I would say, for instance, if you look at maybe have a look at that picture, which on
the laptop
that
there,
up?
What is social media?
Yeah. So perhaps if we look at that, so if you look at on the what side is that? On the right-hand side?
Right.
So you'll see there the world, and basically you have the world, and then you have all these little dots like connection, and that, if you look at it, it looks like a brain with two sides of the brain. So when you look at social media, what you're really looking at is we're all connected. Now, the whole world is now connected. So, for instance, if you look at, and then what's happened is we've gone through waves. So we started with being connected. So it's like, we're connected together. And then the next wave was mobile. So we wanted to be connected, but we also want to be on the move. Mm-hmm. And what things like Facebook and Twitter and lots of others have enabled us to do is to very simply and easily connect together so that we can communicate and exchange information backwards and forwards very simply and easily. So that could be all sorts of things, presentations, pictures, and we're all used to doing that in our personal life.
But I would imagine that what you've got to make absolutely certain is that you're putting the right words out there, the right ethos, the right kind of thing that people are going to be interested in. You can't just put anything out there and expect it to coin a phrase to stick, or can you?
I mean, there's the thing is with social media, it implies transparency. So if you're a company that is, let's say you're a good company, then if you're on social media and you're using social media the right way, it's going to amplify what you already are. But on the corollary of that, if you're not such a good company and your customers don't particularly like you, then it's going to amplify that. So
you've really got to get it right then.
Yeah, you've got to get it right, because most companies are actually neither one nor the other. They're somewhere in the middle. They're not brilliant, but they're not terrible. So if you allow customers to, if you like, to engage with customers really, not just pushing it down and just listening to what you want to listen to, which is typically how most companies operate. If you really get real feedback backwards and forwards, some companies don't really like what they're going to hear.
And there's been some examples of that in the past. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We'll come back to you in just a few moments' time, and we'll talk about some of the takeaways that we're actually going to give to our viewers this evening. And once again, if you are joining us for the first time, or maybe you're watching a repeat of this on YouTube at the moment, don't forget to subscribe, whatever you do. Make certain you press that button. And also, we've got news of a giveaway that you can get on this particular program as well, where you can download a hint and tip sheet. A hint and tip sheet. Yes, one of those as well. You'll be able to download that, and it'll give you a bit of an insight into what social media is all about. And really, if you are brand new to it and you maybe come up and you're hearing all these different buzzwords, then it's going to be the absolute perfect introduction for you. And of course, it's a great way as well for us to find out who's watching the program too. So it's going a little bit both ways there. I suppose it's social media on steroids. That's what we're talking about. What we will do this evening, though, is we will give you hints and tips that you can take away from this program and put into your business. We'll also give you a path, a direction as well, that you can go and find out more information. If you want to talk to Steve Nichols at a future date, then you can. You'll have all the details, all his contact details will be there on this particular page that you're watching this on, be it on YouTube, be it on one of the other video sites, or on our own homepage, which is businessconnectionslive.com. So we've got that all waiting for you. Now, last week's program was a fantastic show. Just going to remind you about that. One of the pieces of advice that was given last week on the program was putting a strategy together for your business, making certain you've got one, updating your business plan, making certain that there was a tomorrow to your business. And the other piece of advice that was given, and this came from Lizanne Jacobs, what she also did as well was she told us all about how you should go about looking for different funding that's available out there for small to medium scale enterprises. Well, much to my amazement, I sat down, I went through some of the suggestions that she gave us during the programme last week, and we were approved for a quite substantial grant today to help towards some further technology. I mean, we are talking not the hundreds, we're talking up a little bit higher than that. I was amazed, and it was easy to do. Now, if you missed the programme last week, well, here's a little bit of a taster of what Lizanne Jacobs was talking about on Business Connections Live. With me this evening, my special guest is Lizanne Jacobs. She's the business and executive coach. She works with an organisation called Ology Coaching. She's one of their coaches that will go out to businesses, and she'll tell us more about that in just a moment. But what she does do for businesses is that she stands back for a moment and she puts together your strategy for success.
It's really looking at each business and seeing what their strengths are and where the person who either owns it or runs it wants it to go. It's very easy for me to come in and say, well, I think you should do this or that, but actually what we do is really take into consideration what they've already done so far and where they want to be. And for some businesses, that is to set up multiple locations or grow their turnover. For some people, it is just completely turning the business around. And so it's therefore looking at their ambitions and helping them to realise it. I think it's really difficult sometimes if you own or run a business. It's very easy to get overwhelmed with all the day-to-day work. We all get a huge flood of emails and phone calls. If you have a number of staff, they constantly want your time and attention.
We're too busy doing business, aren't we? That's what it is.
We're working in the business rather than on the business. And if you actually set aside maybe 2-3 hours every fortnight to really sit down, talk about the business plan, write down what you're going to do over the next 12 months, that can really help you along. And actually, as long as you have less than 250 staff, there are all sorts of schemes that you can benefit from. If you have bought a laptop or planning to buy a laptop soon, there's a grant called Sustainable Routes. Now, if you are in, I just have to quickly cheat, in the southeast of England, which they define as Berkshire, Buckinghamshire, Milton Keynes, Hampshire, etc., Surrey, Sussex, for example, so not the London counties, but the rest of the southeast, you can get a match-funded grant of up to £1,000. So in my work as a business and executive coach and a business consultant, I help people who want to grow their business. And whichever direction that's in, whichever sector that's in, I will look honestly and openly with you to see how you can achieve that and make it really specific and make it measurable and make sure that there's budget allocated against what you want to do, whether you are a bigger, very well organised, very professional firm, or whether you are a small company or even a one-man band. We will also make sure that there's lots of actions to be followed up from, because it's important that it's not just about talking about the business, because the talking can give you lots of insights, but that you actually do something with this as well, so that the next time we meet, we can see clear progress in the business, and that energises the whole business. The people that work for you or work with you or your customers will see as well that you are making progress. And that is what you get at the end, really, of my work. I also work with a whole range of different sectors, so I do teach people best practice from all sorts of sectors, and I have a lot of experience in sales and marketing, so I can give people lots of advice, if they want it, on what sort of sales and marketing strategies they could try in addition to what they've already tried or what they already know that they want to start trying. So that's really what I do with Ology Coaching.
Well, that was Lizanne Jacobs, and she was absolutely fantastic. And as I said, we were really impressed by the advice and information that she gave us during the programme. So once again, to Lizanne, thank you very much. You can find out all her details as well. If you watch the programme already, my director in my ear has said, oh, I better watch that as well then. Yes, you better. I was hoping you might have watched it last week. Anyway, it's great to have your company with us. You're watching Business Connections Live. This is number 13. Steve Hyland with you here. My guest this evening is the author of this particular book here. His name is Steve Nichols. It's a cracking book, actually, if you're into finding out what social media is all about. But in particular, social media in business. Then this is going to be the book for you. And unlike some of the other social media books that you find, this one truly is cram-packed with information that is going to make a difference to your business, and surely that's what you want to do, isn't it? You want to get a little more, some more money in on that bottom line. Steve, let's talk. I kind of interrupted you and cut you short there when you were going through what social media was all about, but really, in a nutshell then, social media is?
Yeah, I mean, social media really is the ability to connect and share information simply and easily, and it's really about participation. So if you look at something like Facebook as an example of one which people will be familiar with, and LinkedIn, if you'll notice, they don't provide any content, no content at all. The content is provided by the users. And this is what the social media companies do. They bring together different communities together so that you can interconnect. And I'll give you some examples a little bit later on. And the other thing is that what's moved is we've now moved to mobiles. So you can now, so initially it was just on a desktop or a laptop, but we've moved to mobile, so you can do it on the move, tablets, and that was the sort of second wave. And the third wave is really where we're coming now, which is things like Google Glass, which is wearable computers, and things like this here. This is called a jawbone, which I'll
what?
mention. It's called a jawbone.
So what does that do?
And this measures the number of steps that you do. So, for instance, I'm trying to keep.
Now just hold your hand up like that so we can see it. There we go.
So this is
there it is.
Yeah.
What is that all about then?
Now,
so what does it do?
So what that does, it's got a device which measures the number of steps that I take. It measures sleep, so for instance how much sleep I do. And what you do is you then just take it off like this, unplug it, put it into your mobile phone. So there's a little jack there, you put it into your mobile phone, and there's an app on your mobile phone. And
that is so cool.
It is very cool.
I want one. Look at that. So you wear it on your wrist. You can see there you've got the connector that you just pop it into your mobile phone, and then there's an app on your mobile phone, and that will actually show you what you've been doing.
And then it will sync to your app on your mobile phone, and then it will look at your sleep. So what quality of sleep, how long you're sleeping. You can set sleep goals. You can have your so for instance, I've got a lot of friends, my various friends that are also on it, and we like teams. So we actually kind of motivate each other to do. So my goal is 10,000 steps. Now, 10,000 steps, my normal steps are 5,000. That's a long way. So I actually have to look for going the long way, twice around the block, various ways to walk up the stairs rather than take the lift, all this kind of stuff. And of course, we're sort of in competition with each other for that kind of stuff. So this is wearables. And I know on one of your other shows, somebody showed you a watch.
That's right.
Now there's a whole new load of watches coming out.
Tom Higgins, yes.
Yes.
And his watch was connected to his phone, and what he would actually get was he would get emails coming through.
Yes.
So he could be in a meeting, and while he was in a meeting, he could look down, and the watch would give him whether it was an important email or not, which was a terrific idea. And I think that's a great idea, because I think what's interesting about that, and I know we're right off subject now.
Sorry, yeah.
But what's interesting about that is that it's about you. It's something that's very personal to you. Personal health and wealth, isn't it, I suppose? Yeah. So that's good.
And I think the other thing is that what you're seeing is that the mobile phone is like the hub. So for instance, in this case, we're taking this off and I'm plugging it into my mobile phone. But there's a whole bunch of medical devices and things like that, which is the same thing. So for instance, there are apps for measuring your heart, blood pressure, heart stuff, all that kind of stuff. So we're getting more and more of that kind of stuff. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But Google Glass, I wanted to talk about that because that is where you're wearing, at the moment there's 20,000 people on the west coast of America testing Google Glass. And the key thing there is that it's like think of a fighter pilot with a heads-up display.
Well, we can see it there on the left-hand side of the screen. Yeah. We can see it there. Now, and that is fascinating. I know we're talking a little bit more about that in the news a little bit later on, but Google Glass, it is a fascinating step forward. Now and we're getting mixed reviews about it, aren't we? Well,
it's the first step. So if you think about mobile phones started with 1G, which was a great big brick, and that was the first. So if you think of Google Glass, that's the first step along a series of innovations. So it's the first step. So it's going to get better. It's going to get, it's going to evolve into something else. Exactly what? Who knows? But if you look at mobile phones, it started with 1G, which was a big brick, which just all we could do is make phone calls. Then we went to 2G. Now 2G meant you could have text, so what we call text messaging now, and also answering machine. So who has answering machines these days? You don't need one because you use
the phone does
it all. And then the next one was 3G, which enabled us to do the internet. So what we have is the mobile internet. So when we're talking about social media, it really has changed a lot. The internet has evolved, and it continues to evolve. And the next wave of evolution is what we call wearable computers. And the other area of there is what we're calling gesture control. So if you've ever seen, later on, there's a picture of Tom Cruise, and he's doing all this thing with his hands. Yeah. Well, there's a company called Leap Motion, and you can actually control a computer now using hand gestures. And there's another company called Flurry, same sort of thing. So we're moving, but again, it's the first step. So if you think of the mobile phone, we're looking at 4G now, and in South Korea, they're looking at 5G at the moment. So, and all that means is better, faster, quicker.
So I suppose really what's happening is the technology is pushing the different apps, the different services. It's pushing it all along, which kind of, I suppose, brings it back very neatly to the way the social media sites are developing the offering that they're giving to businesses and the opportunities that are there. If I was a small business and I was coming to you, I suppose the question I'd be asking, we've got all this technology there, we've got all this social media there. What would be my key strategy? What would I have to consider first of all before implementing it into my business?
Well, I will say start with the end in mind. So social media is not a panacea. I mean, the rules of business still apply. You've still got to have a business strategy. You've still got to have a marketing plan. You've still got to do all the normal things you do. Social media fits within that, but when you think you alluded it to at the beginning, is that there are some strategic things. So there are the buttons on your website, and it's trying to get the right mix of those. And the key thing, if people say, well, what is the mix of those? What do you mean? Well, all that means is, where are your customers? So, for instance, depending on the kind of business you are, and this is very much context driven. So depending on the type of business that you are, depends on where your customers are. So, for instance, if your customers are plumbers, if your customers are people that need plumbers, then that's very much a local business. Mm-hmm. So then you'd expect that something like Yelp, which is very much a local business, content, it's very much location is very important. But if you're looking at some other kind of business, which might be, say, for instance, construction, again, that's quite a local business. So.
But Google itself is going this way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Google where you can SEO it. I mean, all about local Google is what it's all about, and that's giving you higher rankings. So you make certain your address is in there, local content is in there, and when people Google you, it knows where the ISP is, so it knows where the computer is actually physically is actually doing the search, and then we'll give higher results for companies that are local to you.
Absolutely. So I suppose when we're talking about presence, really, we're talking about presence here, and your website is one form of presence, which is your, if you like, 24/7 shop. So that's the bit where people can find about whether you're, and I use the word shop in a loose term. I mean, obviously, if you're a service business or a professional business, then you don't necessarily have a shop. But it's the bit where people go to find out about you.
I suppose to a certain extent we're all selling all the time, aren't we? We're either selling ourselves, we're selling our knowledge to services that we provide. It is all about that constant communication, that constant reminder that yes, I'd like you to interact with me. I'd like to do maybe some form of business with you.
Well, I mean, for instance, some people will probably listening to this and thinking Google Glass and wearable computer, what's that got to do with my business? The thing is, they probably thought that when the internet came out, and they probably thought that when mobiles came out, when the first iPhone came out, I saw an iPhone when it first came out, and I thought I had a Razor, which was a clamshell thing, and I thought, what do I need one of those for? And I think a lot of people think, why do I need one of those? And it's almost until you've experienced it, until you've used it, you don't really know what it is you're missing. And the other thing is that mobile websites, initially when they first came out, they were really designed for a PC and a laptop. But now you've actually got to design your website so that you can actually look at it on a mobile. Now, the reason I talked about Google Glass is because now you've got to think about, okay, what happens when somebody's viewing it through Google Glass? It's a different experience, and therefore all these different devices is a different experience for the customer. And depending on your market, and again, it's very much context driven, depending on your market, who those people are, where those people are, and that's where you've got to go where they are. So it's almost like you've got to go where the party is.
It's very interesting you say that, because while you're saying that, I'm thinking to myself, hadn't even contemplated doing anything about Google Glass. I saw it as a bit of a gadget. And of course it will be huge because Google's behind it. It'll go out there. And of course we're now talking about is it QR scanning or whatever the
QR codes, yeah, QR codes.
So, and of course when you look at your website, that's going to be sitting there, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, if you look at, I mean, Google Glass, initially when it comes out, it's not going to have face recognition technology on it. But a simple hack, if you, for instance, mobile phones come out where they're locked into a network, but actually go to any high street and somebody will unlock your phone for you. So I guarantee within about 5 minutes that people will be unlocking Google Glass and you'll be having face recognition technology. So what that means is that I could be at a meeting somewhere, meeting people, and I could be looking at scanning and I could actually know the person's name. I might even know something about them. I could actually be searching for stuff. I can take pictures, I can take film. So it means that we have a new device, which means that we can do totally different things that we had never even dreamed of before.
So if I'm putting together that social media strategy that I'm thinking about a moment, so really what I've got to take into account now is the fact that there are so many different ways of it actually being observed and being looked at.
This is the media part. So the social part is about people and communication. The media part is the way you do it. So the different platforms, the different types of social software, and I mean there's a myriad of these. And what you're really looking at with your strategy is start with the business strategy, and then what you're really looking at is saying, okay, what is the mix of these? Because the mix will be different for every type of business. And I can give you some examples when we move on a little bit. And those are absolutely quite critical. So always start with the end in mind. Always start with your business strategy. What is that? What is it you're trying to do? You know, for instance, what is it? You know, what are the numbers you're trying to do? And then look at that. Now, the reason I'm talking about these advanced technologies is because, for instance, if you look at people like, I mean, for instance, let me just move on to this one. If you look at this, these companies on here. Now, if you look at the companies across the top, Jessop's, Kodak, HMV, and BlockBuster, they all have one thing in common. They've all gone bust. They've all gone bust because of technological reasons. I mean, so when I say technological reasons, in their markets, for instance, if you look at Jessop's, that was a camera shop, and Kodak sold
and a
film.
fantastic camera shop to boot as well, with great customer service.
Absolutely.
But it just goes to show you the product wasn't right.
Now, this goes back to what Henry Ford, years and years ago, he said, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they'd say faster horses. Because remember, cars started out as a horse with a carriage behind it, and then eventually we had a different drive unit. In other words, the innovation curve moved, and we now had a different technology, which was a different way of driving. Now, the first cars that came out were ridiculous. They were slow, they were no better than, and people used to say, oh, I'd never get rid of my horses. I mean, I love my horses. But the thing is, if you look now, would you give your car up for a horse? I mean, would you actually go back to a horse and carriage? Of course not. It would be ridiculous. It doesn't mean that people don't like horses still, but they don't use horses to drive carriages. So now, if you were somebody, a small business that made, let's say, the whips that whip the buggy, whip the horse to make it go faster, and you were in that business and you weren't watching what was happening with technology, then whips would not be very useful if you had a car. Because have you ever used a whip in your car to make it go faster?
I can see exactly where you're coming from.
Yes.
So going back to that slide again, we've got Jessop's, got HMV, we've got BlockBuster.
Yes.
Very sorry news about BlockBuster, of course, but you're dead right. They were overtaken by the technology and they found themselves in a real predicament. So really what we're saying to the people who are watching this at the moment is,
well, don't be one of those. I mean, don't be the people that, for instance, BlockBuster, you mentioned, fantastic customer service, 60,000 people, great shops. So they were seen as a very, very good company. But Netflix comes along, they have a completely different way of delivering a film. Instead of walking down to a shop in the rain to buy initially it was video, then it became CD. Now you can do it from your home and you can download it using your Wi-Fi on your TV. Now, some people still probably are listening to this, probably still can't do that. But most, a lot of people can, and maybe they would still like BlockBuster. But the fact is that technology's moved on, and if you look at HMV, it's the same thing. Some people love going browsing in a shop. But the problem is, I'll give you an example. My mother, she's 75, and she's an avid customer of Amazon.
right.
She doesn't even have an account with Amazon. She buys all her films from Amazon, but she goes into HMV to check out what she wants, and then she phones me up and she says, how much is this on Amazon? And
but
she
she
buy it
gets
for her.
it, and then you buy it.
And I buy it for her.
I must take your number down so that I can get a few films.
But the point is that here is somebody that doesn't even have a relationship with a company that is able to buy their product, because she looks at it. So there's this idea of what they call showrooming. In America, it's called showrooming. So that's where somebody comes into your place, has a look around, and so it might be a TV, for instance. So you go in there, even there are companies now where if you buy the same company's product on their internet, it's 10% cheaper than if you buy it in their own shop. And it's only when you challenge them that they will actually give you that discount. So people are quite smart now. They realise that if they go into a shop and they look at that product, and even shoes. I mean, somebody was telling me the other day, people buy cars and things like that this way. So shoes, for instance, most people think, well, shoes and clothes, you've got to try them on. Yeah, so you go into the shop, you try them on, and then if it's an expensive item, then you might buy it online. So this is a problem that some businesses are having, because Amazon doesn't have shops. It has very efficient distribution, and it doesn't pay. It's very efficient on its tax affairs and all these other things, which is a.
But we are talking about a big scale company here. We're talking about Amazon, who are absolutely huge. When we're looking at the small to medium scale enterprise, the small SMEs, the startup companies.
There's one of those in your coming close. The point I'm trying to make is this, is every industry has the equivalent of an Amazon or a Netflix coming into their industry. Every industry. I mean, there's not an industry now where technology isn't coming in and changing that industry in some way. And there's just so many different ways, and we can talk about some of the different industries where there are people coming in and they're just doing it differently. And it goes back to the Henry Ford with the horses.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll come back. We'll talk a little bit more about that, and also the kind of strategies that you need to be putting together when it comes to this whole area of social media. And that's what's so interesting and so exciting about this particular program. If you're not in tune with social media, but more importantly, if you're not in tune maybe with the technology that makes the difference when it comes to viewing that social media, maybe your business is missing out just a teeny weeny bit. Now, talking about businesses, a couple of weeks back we went to the Business Show 2013. That was at Olympia. Fantastic day out. If you are a new business, maybe an SME, maybe you've been going for a little while or not, then it's absolutely a fantastic day out. If you want to find out more about how you can grow your business, if you want to talk to business gurus who are there, if you want to talk to the experts that have been there already and can give you the advice, you had the likes of For Networking, and you also had Business Scene as well. Now, the nice thing about Business Scene is we know them of old, and that, of course, is headed up by Warren Cass. Now, Warren Cass will be joining us very shortly here on the program. He's going to be joining us in the new year. In fact, he'll be coming in and explaining a little bit more about what Business Scene is all about. But I took the opportunity while we were at the show to ask him a few questions. So I said, come on, Warren, tell us all, what is Business Scene all about then?
So my name is Warren Cass. I'm the founder of Business Scene. We're a membership organisation in the UK supporting small business owners and entrepreneurs in their growth.
Tell us a little bit about Business Scene, because a lot of people don't really know what Business Scene is all about. They see the name everywhere, but maybe aren't familiar exactly what you do.
But Business Scene has evolved greatly. Over the last year or two particularly, we have identified that there's still a real lack of support for small business owners in the UK. When people are running their own business, it can be quite an isolated experience. Excuse the speed networking going in the background. But also, most small business owners have started their business around a particular passion that they have, or certainly an area of expertise. They don't necessarily know how to market and to sell that expertise either. So what we do is we stand alongside our members, shoulder to shoulder. We help them with 4 key areas. One is around raising profile and gaining new customers. One is around driving profitability through savings and a lot of the initiatives and special offers we have for members. One is around peace of mind. We give them protection for our legal expenses cover, which is 3 times more comprehensive than anybody else in the marketplace. So they sleep well at night and rest assured that they've got 24/7 legal advice should they need it. And the last one is providing a community of like-minded professionals, which is really, really important. It's that critical feedback on, lots of people know what networking is, but they see it as just a lead generation tool where they're handing out business cards and doing all of those things. It's much, much, much more than that. It's about the incubator for our ideas, critical feedback maybe on the issues that we face. But the people that invest in a particular network and develop deep trusted networks are infinitely more referable. So Business Scene is about helping our members grow their businesses.
If they want to get more details or they want to join up, because there are some amazing offers that you've actually got as part of your package, what should they do?
So initially, if they go to www.business-scene.com, they can find out more about our premium membership. And you're right, lots and lots of benefits, which are all on our brochure, all on the website, and there's some video there as well explaining what we do. But for an investment of £195, the value is huge.
Fantastic show, fantastic guy. Warren Cassie's going to be joining us in a couple of weeks' time. In the new year, he'll be with us, and we'll be finding out more about Business Scene. It is a great organisation. They give you some really, really good deals as well when it comes to property, insurance, location for your offices, all those kind of things. And we'll be able to find out a little bit more about what the other things are that Warren Cass and Business Scene can actually offer you if you're an SME or a small business. With me this evening, my guest is Steve Nichols. He is the author of Social Media in Business. Now, if you've been joining us this evening, you think to yourself, well, are they going to be talking about Facebook again? Are they going to be talking about Twitter? Are they going to be... Yes, these are all components of what social media is all about. But the thing that's important about it is that we've also got to look at the technology that is out there. Social media at the moment is being driven by the technology. There's no two ways about it. We spoke a moment or so ago about Google Glass. The different ways that people are actually observing the different material that you are putting out there on the web. So give us a few more examples then, social media, a few more examples of the places that we can go to, maybe that we can learn from as well.
Yeah, so let's give an example of one that probably people will know of, is Groupon. Now Groupon, a lot of people have heard of Groupon. It's what they call the daily deals market now. Now Groupon started looking at the classified advertising market. Now for people out there, the classified advertising is when you open a magazine or a newspaper, the local newspaper, at the back you'll have these adverts which people pay for, and they have usually a telephone number on there. So what Groupon did was they took some of the technology that are available now. So they took email marketing, they took social media and crowd buying, and they mixed those elements together to create a completely new way of doing business, a completely new market. And that is now a multi-billion-dollar company.
Now, you've actually got a slide here that shows that, haven't you? Actually, it'll just pop up in just a second.
So I mean, this is what we call a game changer strategy, in the sense that if you look at what they did was that. So let's give an example from as a small business. Say like I'm a restaurant or a spa or something like that. Effectively, what Groupon would do was say, okay, we will bring you, say, 200 or 300 customers if you give those people a good deal. So in other words, we're looking at bulk buying, so crowd buying. So if let's say I'm the restaurant, and I'm closed. Let's say I'm during the week at lunchtimes, I'm a bit quiet. So you might say, actually, I want to get some more people in to try my restaurant so that they'll come back. That's the theory. But you give them a deal, and on the people's side, they get a deal if they come and try it. And then what they do is, once enough of those people take up the deal, then they usually market it through social media. So effectively, they're using social media as a marketing channel. So I'm actually marketing it to my friends. And it's actually fascinating, because the difference here is, if I use the old advertising way, that if it was all to do with the copy, you know, if I made a mistake and all, you know, how good that was. Whereas with this, it is, okay, you put the deal together, people either like it or they don't like it.
What kind of businesses do you think that's suitable for then?
Oh, this is for a whole range of business, but I mean, these are for mainly small businesses. You know, I mean, people are using it for training, they're using it for spas, I mean, shop type stuff, you know, restaurants.
So it really is, it's when you've got a product that you want to be able to get out there, where you can actually go, look, here is the offer. Yep. If you come in and take the offer up, then you're going to get it at this discounted price.
Yeah, I mean, I suggest people go to Groupon, have a look. I mean, they're doing for holidays. They're moving into all sorts of areas. They're broadening their base with it. So there's an example of something which was actually a local business. They started in Chicago, and they took a local concept, because classified advertising is a very local business, and then they took that but used the if you like, the power of the internet, and they took it as a global, on a city by city basis. So
I think what is amazing about that slide as well is created over 12 to 25 billion dollars in value
in 4 years.
In 4 years
during a recession.
And I suppose during a recession as well. Yeah. And you think to yourself that, I mean, any business to actually generate that kind of income, if we go back 20 years, even 10 years, it would have been one heck of a challenge.
Yes.
But here you've got something in 4 years during a recession. Is it because it's the type of the business that it is? Because we're in a recession and everybody's looking for a deal. So it was the right time and the right place.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a combination of things. They looked at a market that wasn't very sexy. Let's face it, classified advertising isn't a very sexy market, and people would have said, "Oh, that's played out." You know, and I suppose the point, the message to your listeners is this: is every market has a potential for redoing it, if you like, looking at it in a different way, looking at some of the technologies that are available to us, you know, Facebook, Twitter, and all that kind of stuff. We're not just talking about those, we're talking about a whole range of different things. So, shall I move on and give you a couple more examples? I'm going to flick over that one. I'm going to look at something real simple, video, now, which is what we're doing here.
And we like this. We like it a little bit. And they say that there is a huge uptake when it comes to video. You've got YouTube, of course, the second most powerful search engine that's sitting there on the internet. And video really has become very, very powerful when it comes to marketing and selling a product.
Absolutely. Now, if you take someone like Salesforce.com, a huge CRM platform, big company. Now, they have a very complex product. So again, for them, what they used to do, people used to take a laptop and they'd go out with their PowerPoint presentations. Their Salesforce would go out to meet customers to go through a simple presentation or quite a complicated presentation. But now what they do is they actually experimented at the early days with YouTube to actually, if you like, put together some very professional presentations so the customer can actually look at it themselves, and then when the salesman goes out or salesperson goes out, that they're actually talking at the next level up. They're not talking about a presentation which you can look at yourself, and customers get fed up with that anyway. They want to go to the next level. They want to ask questions. Now, Salesforce, I talked to those guys there from, they said that they reckon that was worth several hundred salespeople to them. In fact, they said somewhere around the region of about 750 salespeople. Now, a salesperson, you know, a good salesperson, you're looking at, a substantial amount of money, probably 50,000 at least a year, plus the cost to employ them. So if you look at the, 750, that's a substantial amount of money. Now, some people will be going, oh, Salesforce is a big company, but scale that down to the size of your own company. Now, maybe it's half a salesperson, but the point is the people that you have got salespeople, instead of sending them out doing presentations which the customer can look at themselves, actually, you can get them doing higher level things. So it's not about getting rid of people, it's about getting them doing training their role. So, and also the other thing is when you bring new salespeople in, they can use the same materials to train the salespeople. So video and also things like webinars, a slightly different way of doing it. But again, it's a very, very useful way of communicating and having time with your customers so they get to know you as a company and what you're about and how you're about. And think about how much time people spend trying to get in the door. People come to your website or they go to YouTube, and again, these are different ways of connecting. So the same video can be on your website or it could be on a YouTube channel. Now, some people might even go to your website. They might go to the YouTube channel and then circle back round through that, or it might be on your Facebook page.
What are your thoughts about, I mean, it's nice that we're talking about video because I'm a big advocate of video online, surprisingly. But the thing that's interesting about it is that up until maybe 2 years ago, or even 18 months ago, people were saying as long as you've got any video up there, then it's good. Doesn't matter what it looks like, doesn't matter what it sounds like, as long as you've got it there, at least you're doing it. And it seems that there's been a bit of a gear shift recently where we've actually gone from any old rubbish online to, video Mark II or video take two. Whereas we're now looking for more professional presentations. We're not just looking for the head and shoulders shot straight down the camera lens, where the sound has to be important, the image is important, but most importantly, the content is absolute king, and it's the most important thing in the whole world. And there are so many people out there that seem to miss the opportunity or miss the mark when they're putting videos up. I was very surprised. I received a video via email yesterday, and while the content was fabulous, you couldn't hear it very well, and the picture quality was great. Now, there is an expression for that. It does make you reach for the off button very quickly. So we have to now start thinking about quality production as well. And of course, Google are opening studios around the world to allow companies to put quality together.
I mean, the thing to remember is that a few years ago, you couldn't do any of this stuff because the only way you could do this was just too expensive. You couldn't have access to the tools. Now, everybody has the tools. If you've got a laptop and you've got a camera and, you've got the tools. But again, on the other hand, it's a bit like a difference between a concert virtuoso and somebody who just plonks away on his violin or his piano. I mean, there's a big difference between those two. And so, I mean, for instance, yourself, you're a professional, and obviously you're going to put together something that's going to look and sound very, very good and put the company in the right
somebody
light.
else walked in the room.
I mean, the thing is, does it represent your company? Are you proud of what you're putting out there? Is this something that when you look at it, are you thinking, oh my God, that looks terrible? I mean, everybody's seen the video where you sound to somebody that says, hello, my name is, and that is not the person. So what you're trying to get across in the video is the naturalness of you when you're being yourself, not you when you're on the camera, where you're being somebody else and being wooden and not yourself. And of course, that takes practice and all sorts of other things. And of course, it depends what business you're in. So,
and I suppose there's a little bit, you are actually sending out maybe like a letterhead, aren't you? You would never dream of sending a letterhead out that you've drawn yourself in crayon.
Yes,
but yet people will do the equivalent when it comes to video. Am I just harping on too much about this? I'm not quite certain. So a few videos then go a long way.
Yes.
It's an easy and quick way for complex products. YouTube channel to communicate to customers, and it's worth several hundred salespeople. It just goes to show you could actually implement that very easily into your business. I tell you what, we're going to have the news in just a moment, what's been happening over the last 7 days. Can I just remind you on our last programme before Christmas, which is next week, our guest is going to be Sarah Dobson. Now, she is the fleet manager with the AA. She's going to be joining us in here. Now, if you've been wondering what you should be doing with your business car, your transport, how you should actually go about maybe perhaps, well, really selling that service on, because if you're driving from London up to Birmingham and you need to actually charge for that, well, then Sarah's going to be telling you all about that. And also, she's also going to be explaining to you as well, for that matter, the things that you should take into account if you are actually using your vehicle for a company car. You're watching Business Connections Live. It's lovely to have your company with us right now. I tell you what we'll do. Let's check out what's been happening over the last 7 days in the business news with Linda Bazant.
You're watching Business Connections Live, and here's the business news for Wednesday, the 11th of December 2013. Chancellor George Osborne told the country last Thursday Britain's economic plan is working, but the job is not done. Making his autumn statement, Mr Osborne delivered good news for the economy, with a freeze in fuel duty, extending small business rate relief with rate rises capped at 2% from April, as well as help for young people seeking work and for small businesses. Mr Osborne said Britain was growing faster than any other major economy. He said that instead of forecasting growth of 1.8% for 2014, they were now predicting 2.5%, and similarly, the forecast for growth for the next 4 years had been increased. The hard work of the British people is paying off, and we will not squander their efforts, he said. The growth in job vacancies hit the fastest rate in 15 years in November, according to the latest survey from the body that represents recruitment firms. The strongest demand was for engineers, followed by nursing staff and other medical and care workers. Bernard Brown, partner and head of business services at KPMG and one of the report's sponsors, said, "Business certainly seems to be more confident. Although demand for staff is high, the availability of candidates to fill permanent and temporary posts fell in November, continuing a recent trend," the report showed. It may be that people are still worried about job security, but it is more likely that we are seeing a return of the traditional winter slowdown in recruitment, as staff are more focused on Christmas than careers, said Mr Brown. A woman thought to be the first person facing charges for driving while wearing Google Glass has pleaded not guilty in court. The device features a thumbnail-sized transparent display above the right eye. It lets wearers take pictures, record video, send messages, or perform other tasks with touch controls or by speaking commands. It connects to the internet using Wi-Fi hotspots or wirelessly through mobile phones. A judge set a trial date of January the 16th, and her lawyer, William Considine, said Google Glass is that next step in technology, and it will be interesting to see if the law changes as new devices are developed, or if the legislature leaves it to the courts to decide how to interpret the existing laws. The technology is not yet widely available to the public, but my client was one of 10,000 explorers who received the Google Glass earlier this year as part of a tryout. Google has not announced a public release date for the device, but speculation centres around early 2014. Facebook and Twitter users will be shown previously unpublished legal notes to stop them inadvertently breaking the law by commenting on court cases online. Attorney General Dominic Grieve QC said the advisories, which have previously been issued only to print and broadcast media outlets on a not for publication basis, are designed to make sure that fair trials take place. Blogs and social media sites like Twitter and Facebook mean that individuals can now reach thousands of people with a single tweet or post, he said. This is an exciting prospect, but it can pose certain challenges to the criminal justice system. He said he had changed the policy to stop the public tripping over legal pitfalls by commenting on court cases in a potentially prejudicial manner. And if you have any comments or views on these or any other stories, please contact us on all social media or email studio@businessconnectionslive.com.
This is a useful one.
Interesting to actually hear in the news there that we're already talking about Google Glass, the first woman, of course, to end up in court because she's wearing it. Now, she's claiming, as Linda said, that she didn't have it connected to her phone or anything like that. She wasn't online. She was just wearing the glasses. Maybe she's just showing off a bit. But you were just saying there, Steve, weren't you, that it looks like there could be all sorts of issues that come along. The radio's a distraction in the car, your sat-nav's a distraction, kids are a distraction in the car. Now we're going to have Google Glass as well, where you can be watching your favourite TV programme at the corner of your eye. I mean, what's your feelings on that?
I think that's more of a social change. That's a kind of cultural change that's going to have to happen. And I think it depends on how the bulk of us, for instance, if millions of people go out and buy Google Glass, then I think there's going to be a shift and there'll have to be a change, whether she's guilty or not. If it's just a minority of people, then maybe people have to do it differently. But a lot of businesses have already banned the use of Google Glass. You know, for instance, like casinos. You know, a number of businesses don't want you to be
to have all that technology at your fingertips or at your eyeball tips anyway. I tell you what, it is fascinating. We're going to keep our eye on that here on Business Connections Live. Just a quick reminder, in the new year we're going to have another guest on the programme, Aaron Thompson. He's the digital director of NatWest Bank's BizCrowd. They're the new free online community for UK businesses. They're going to be joining us here on Business Connections Live in the new year, so we look forward to them joining us. By the way, if you are watching on YouTube at the moment, don't forget you can subscribe to the channel. If you're watching us on our actual website, Business Connections Live, you can download a special document that Steve's put together for us right now as well. The email's on the screen. You can always contact us. We're here all the time. All the different social media outlets, we use them all. And but if you do want to email us, I mean, it sounds so old hat now, doesn't it? But it is studio@businessconnectionslive.com. We're going to talk about something that is a bit of a revelation. If you find that you're just too busy to maybe do some of this new technology, this social media experiment, if you're just too busy in your business to do it, or you don't feel you've got the skills or the expertise, there is another way, isn't there?
Absolutely. And in fact, I'm going to give you two examples of two different ways of doing this. So Elance, now Elance is a way, for instance, I'll give you an example. My book, which you talked about earlier, I've actually got an audio version of the book. And I'm dyslexic, so I didn't actually read the book. I actually had, I went to Elance and I looked for actors because they're used to doing reading and they're natural. So I literally, now Elance, what that does, that puts freelance people together with people that need projects and things doing. So in my case, I had a project which is I needed somebody to read my book, record it, and chop it into pieces so that I could then sell it on CDs. So I went out, I had 60 applicants. They all bid for my project. So this is how they do. They bid for the project, and then I asked them to read 2 pages of my book, so that I could decide, you know, the kind of voice that I wanted. I was aiming at the American market for the main thing here, so I went for an American. And if you look, I don't know if you can see on the the thing there. Now the guy on the right there, never met him, but I liked his voice. I tested it with a number of customers, people that they loved his voice. And Troy, Troy, his name.
Hi,
Troy
my name's Troy.
Yes, and he read the book. Yeah. And within a week, literally, he'd sent me back the CDs, the master CDs, and then I was able to then put it up onto Amazon and various other places.
Now, Elance is a straightforward website. If you just Google Elance, you're going to find that. And you can do that with a whole host of different things. Everything from designing a website all the way through to actually doing applications for your business to go on the iPhone and Android platform as well. It is a fantastic way.
Massive
and you
resource.
can budget very cleverly. hello, you can budget very cleverly, can't you?
Yes, I mean there are things you've got to watch out for on something like Elance, because you're dealing with people from all over the world. So you can get something done very cheap. Like for instance, in that case, I had a range of people. Some people were going to charge about $6,000 for that, down to down to somebody who was going to do it for $100, and Troy was around about the $300. Now $300 to read my book, put it onto, I thought was pretty reasonable. I mean, that would have taken me weeks to probably do it. And he was very fluent, and I liked the result. But as you say, you can use it for websites. I mean, anything you can. There are freelancers doing everything you can possibly do. I mean, I'm sure your kind of work is, there are people that do this kind of work. Perhaps you should be on there if you're not already on there. But Elance, Odesk, there's people per hour. There are a whole range of these different ones, and in the white paper.
But the good thing about them, which one do you reckon is the best one then?
Well, I like Elance, but I've used Odesk and I use people per hour. There's another one, if you want a really cheap one, there's one called Fiverr.
That's the one.
Fiverr.com. and for $5, you can get all sorts of things. Like
$5? Even better.
That's £3.50 for people that don't know dollars. But for £3.50, for instance, if you want some logo concepts and things like that. So I use it for that kind of thing. Now,
I'm going to just do another
Now, this is a quick example on this one, because we're going to ask you very shortly to give us some takeaways in a moment. But let's just go through this one.
Now,
here.
this is another way.
Designs.
This one's called 99 Designs. Now, this is where you get. So the other one is freelancers, linked to people that want projects, and you can do it by the hour, or you can do it as a project, and people bid for it. In this case, this is design. So, for instance, I need a new cover I'm updating my book next year, so probably about March. End of March next year, there'll be a new second edition, which is coming out, but that won't be out till probably March, April time. And I need a new cover. So I went out to, I had 40 people bid to put in concepts. I had 400 different covers.
Gosh.
And from that, I was able to then narrow it down to about 5 designers, and then this was the cover that we eventually sort of chose. But so, for instance, for small businesses, that, for instance, if you've got a shop or you need a logo or something like that, you can go to Elance and you'll have one designer, or maybe 2 or 3 designers, but you're only going to get that one style. If you go to something like 99 Designs for about, I think it was about £300. I mean, you have to check it out yourself, but they can do websites. And so if you're looking for concepts, and like in my case, I was looking for, I want to get a range of concepts for the cover, and some that I hadn't even thought of. And so I had 40 different people giving me ideas, and we had, as I said, 400 ideas. I couldn't have got that from one source. So it was for me, it was great to get a range of things, and then using something like Elance to then get a designer to then develop that. But as it turns out, in this case, the person that we eventually selected, we ended up with about 3 that we really liked, and so we kept some of those for other things like white papers and such like. And the other thing is we found a designer which we then used to design our website. So
I think the thing that's interesting about these, and if you are a small business, it is really worth considering.
Absolutely.
I think
this is not
is that if you're looking to maybe to list build, and you're thinking about a way of generating that, and you want to give a bit of a giveaway, in other words, and you want to build your lists on. You give us your email address and your name, we'll give you this bag, then you're in an ideal position to actually go to Elance to get something produced that has got value to it that you can actually give away at a reasonable price.
And you can go to someone like Alibaba, and you can source from China to get products made, and so there's a lot of, to be honest, the time, we haven't got time to go through a lot of the other things, but 99 Designs, I like that, again, for coming up with concepts. To work the concept up, that's a slightly different thing, but to come up with broad concepts. I mean, I walked down, I was in Ealing the other day, and I looked at the shops, the parade of shops, and I just thought, looking at the shop designs, the shop, and most of them looked like homemade. They looked like somebody had just sort of done it themselves, and it looked like that. Whereas if you go to a multinational type company, you can see it's been done by a professional, and it looks fantastic. But nowadays, you don't have to spend a lot of money to get, because you can get people from, the person that did this was in Romania, I think. So, there are very talented people all over the world.
Fantastic, and I think it's really well worth remembering as well, for that matter, that if you are thinking about doing this, go to Elance, have a look at that. The other websites, all the details that Steve's just been talking about, are all going to be sitting on there. Tell you what I'm going to ask Steve to do right now. Would you just really encapsulate what we've talked about over the last 60 minutes. There's so much there. We've barely scratched the surface.
Absolutely.
But there is truly a revolution going on. And it isn't just the social media websites that are part of the revolution. The technology is part of the revolution. How you go about getting the content for what you're giving away, what you're selling, what you're even saying. That's all part of the revolution as well. So, Steve Nichols, if you don't mind, straight down the lens of camera number 3 just over there, and just encapsulate the last 60 minutes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Steve Nichols from Social Media in Business. And what we've been talking about is social media is a revolution. And what we're looking at is effectively technology is evolving, but we're experiencing it as a revolution because it's evolving exponentially, but we're experiencing it as a revolution. Now, from a business perspective, there are a number of things you've got to think about. One, start with the end in mind. What is the goal? What is it you're trying to do? So don't just look at social media for the sake of it. I must have a Facebook page. I must have this, that, and the other. What is it you're trying to do? So start with a goal. Second thing is you need to understand the broader range of things that are available. So, what are the opportunities? So need to understand the opportunities. And my book is designed to really help you understand the broad array, the landscape, social media landscape. And this is a landscape that doesn't stand still. In the last 2 years since my book's been out, the landscape is starting to shift and you can now start to see the difference. So the other thing is risks. There are risks with social media. So for instance, social media will amplify what you already are. So if you're a company that's not that great, you're going to have to smarten yourself up. You're going to have to bring yourself in line so that you can't get away with it now. If you're in the murky world of there's no way around it. You've got to be good. There's just no other way around it. The other thing I would say is this is a people issue. When we're talking about communication is a people issue. It really isn't a technical one. I mean, a lot of people often say to me, oh, this is my IT people, or this is my marketing department. Well, if you look at Elance, that isn't a marketing department. I mean, marketing people might use it. Sourcing, for instance, if you're doing sourcing. These are different parts of the organization. And so what you need to do is look at the whole of your organization and how that fits with things. But it's really about communication. It's about people. And the third, and I suppose the final thing, is implementation. You have to have a step-by-step method to implement. And that's pretty much what I would say.
Well, I mean, it's been a fascinating hour. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and once again, it's all the surprises that I always get here when I sit here. Is I talk to people like yourself who are actually out there. You're actually doing it. You're working with organisations. You're educating organisations, and you're educating businesses to actually maybe look at what they're doing in a slightly different light. I think if you keep doing the same thing every day, you're going to do more of the same thing, and you'll get the same kind of results. But by just changing the angle slightly, all of a sudden things start to come a little bit more into focus. Steve, it's been an absolute fascinating 60 minutes with you. Can we invite you back on the programme in the new year again? Because I know there's a whole pile of material over there.
Yes, unfortunately, that's scraped the surface.
And that practically wraps up the programme, in fact. So thank you very much indeed for all your company over the last 60 minutes. We've got Sarah Dobson next week on the programme. Until you join us next week, listen, have yourselves a fantastic time. Christmas just around the corner. We're all looking forward to that, aren't we? Get that Christmas shopping done. My birthday on Monday. Have I mentioned that to anybody? Listen, have yourselves a fantastic week. We'll see you next Wednesday at 7 o'clock live with Business Connections Live. Until then, have a fabulous time and get ready for Christmas. From me, Steve Highland, and Steve Nichols. It's bye for now. Bye-bye. Look after yourself. Bye-bye.
Oh, that was